I'm Hani Rashid. I'm an architect. I practice in New York and I teach here in Vienna. I think that architecture has been traditionally a sort of socio-political and aesthetic art form. And now the transformation is that with a kind of emphasis now also on the technological as it affects those aspects. Understanding cities, understanding form, understanding the human condition, and understanding art and artistry and aesthetics. So you kind of combine all those into a discipline and you end up in the discipline of architecture. As a teacher, it's fascinating to me how much you learn from your students and how much a really powerful sort of pedagogical environment has to do with a sort of feedback loop between sort of really engaged and passionate students of architecture dealing with engaged and passionate practitioners and professors. And so if you can get into that sort of ecosystem, it's a very powerful thing. And I think that teaching for me has always never been an option. It's a critical part of existing as an architect. And every one of the programs we look at from semester to semester, and including the thesis projects, is a kind of sort of as deeply as we can go into certain aspects of that kind of interference and interface between architecture, social space, technological innovation. And we sort of ask ourselves questions about if these innovations are coming down the pipe, how do they affect the way we will think about designing, think about creating, think about inventing as architects, and innovating. So yeah, it's really the idea of running a research lab centered around the idea of moving into the future.
I'm Kazuyo Sejima. I came from Tokyo. I run the office Sana in Tokyo with my partner Nishizawa. This year, my studio theme is to think about the context and how to catch it. And first we started using the Vienna, the old city area. And for me, it's the city of Vienna is very interested in because I'm always excited to walk the city and then I cannot define which is street, which is courtyard, and the building and the garden. It's very integrated, and then so that is very interesting for me. Maybe I like to continue somehow to think about context, and because I think for me it's very important to think architecture, how to connect the environment, and then it's very difficult how to touch or how to understand the context, the way. So I want to think about with students how to understand that, and then also together is how to react or how to have a relationship.
I'm Greg Lynn, and I'm a professor here at the Angewandte and have been for close to 20 years. One of the things I love about being here is architecture is very connected to culture, and it's connected to other design and industrial practices. And it learns from them and also leads them. It's very hard to innovate for a client, and teaching is a great place to innovate. So most architects that I am colleagues with also teach, and teaching here in Vienna is great because I'm close friends with a lot of the colleagues and have been for a long time here. Here I try to work in 2-year blocks where we'll go very deep into a certain topic. So for the last year and a half, we've been looking at augmented reality. For 2 years before that, we looked at robotics at the scale of moving rooms. And one of the great things here is I work with students for 3 years, and I work with them continuously. So we can work for 2 years on an idea, and then they can take that and turn it into a diploma project. When you think of Vienna, you don't think of Silicon Valley and high technology. But what we're doing in the studio here, I believe, is ahead of any place I'm aware of in terms of augmented reality, virtual reality, mixing all kinds of media. The students here fill their models with characters that are moving, that have intelligence on their own and swarm intelligence. We're really doing a lot here with architecture and technology and thinking about not only how you design, but also how technology is going to change the way we live in cities.
Well, I came to teach here in Vienna at the University of Applied Arts because it's an incredibly unique school on the world map. Studios shift from theme to theme along the lines of different things that we need to attack in terms of understanding the way architecture interfaces with the city and with the human condition.
It's important for young people who started to think about architecture with some little bit elder experience people like me, and it's important for both for me and also for young people.
One of the great things about the Angewandte is it's like running your own little department of architecture. So I can really work in a very discrete way on specific problems with my students. What's great is that you every semester get together and do diploma reviews and see what the other people are doing.
We are a school with many professors, with cutting-edge strategies in an international context. So we are still kind of the avant-garde school that we used to be since at least 100 years.
Angewandte is the place with an intense interaction between different disciplines. So this is the basis to contribute to the most serious questions for the future of architecture.
The Angewandte also, being in Vienna, has a very unique relationship between East and West. And I mean not just Eastern and Western Europe, but also Europe and the Orient, as we used to call it. And I find that an incredibly freeing context, free of the constraints that we have, for example, in the United States, a very technological culture, and in Western Europe, which has its own very heavy traditions. I find Angewandte to be a very, very unique place.
I think Angewandte is very special because there are students from many countries, from many educational, scientific backgrounds. So there is a constant influx of new ideas, of new ways how to do stuff. So this makes the Angewandte a very fertile ground for new ideas.
I think what is very beneficial for architecture students is that the Angewandte is an art school. So the artistic environment for sure opens ways of new thinking about future developments and future visions.
I think this is a very fertile ground for creating new ideas and really what we call to look into the future.
Actually, I think the Angewandte is a place where there's a lot of freedom and passion and talent and expertise. And so I make use of that, and I think there is lots of opportunities to apply that in diverse contexts.
Since a period of time, we are working on the development of advanced digital tools for architecture and structural engineering, such as Caramba and Octopus.
My job is primarily to discover new ways of connecting design to emerging developments in science, technology, philosophy, and especially social developments. Today, one of the biggest problems is understanding what is the nature and structure of experience. And a lot of new developments in science are helping us, and in philosophy, are helping us understand exactly what the object of design is.
There is no need to make the same mistakes again that had been made in the past. And on the other hand, we can also learn from concepts that were successful. We can critically review them. So the main task, of course, is to make people understand those concepts and to provide some elements that tie them to the present or maybe even the future.
How to generate new forms and to use natural forces basically to solve the problems of the 21st century. So particularly, of course, the energy problems, the resources, and how working with new forms of architecture we can develop a form of architecture which solves these problems. It's a large part of the problem, can also be a large part of the solution. But it necessitates that architecture develops, like I say, new forms to deal with the problems, and not that new technologies are embedded into old forms.
Architecture is becoming more and more complex, and it requires the collaboration of many experts and many specialists. I think it will become more important in the future to reconnect these things, to pay more attention to local conditions, and this close relationship to the regional situation will be an important factor and an important aspect of sustainable architecture.
The translation of Angewandte is applied, the School of Applied Arts, and the term applied I'm really fascinated in, because application and applying ideas, concepts, knowledge to the society is one of the most important things these days. And information is something that needs to be interlinked with the physical production, with the physical conceptualizing of artifacts.
So, first lesson, the most beautiful of theories. In his youth, Albert Einstein spent a year loafing aimlessly. You don't get anywhere by not wasting time.
I mean, there are immense challenges on a global scale at the moment, such as climate change and global migration, and I think we address that like in a small scale in the course of the lab. Actually, I think applied foreign affairs is contributing to the future of architecture on many levels. First and foremost, it's located on the African continent. It's investigating spatial, environmental, cultural, infrastructural challenges, and I think that's like what are the big topics of our time. And we do that in a very experimental and transdisciplinary manner, and that's also what I think is the future of architecture.
We are trying to harness digital simulation as a tool for enhancing the creative input for architectural design.
I basically really think that it's important to think architecture in a larger context. So not only to think about the single individual design, but also how it relates.
We are looking for the impact of social as well as technological innovations and what sort of influence they have on urban agglomerations.
One thing is that students shall be capable of using computers as creative tools and not as black boxes, which give some results and which cannot be controlled. I think control is the main topic here.
Students need to know how to think. They need to know how to reconfigure problems. They need to know how to invent their own problems and how to sell that particular aspect of their creative activity.
We always try to convince students how important it is to control the whole process of architectural design, from the first sketches to the building.
And nowadays we have dozens of ways, and so we make sure that the students are aware of all the possibilities and learn how to choose wisely.
We have talented and motivated students from all over the world, and there is an intense exchange between teachers and students.
The energy design, as we see it at Angewandte, is a very holistic approach. Also see it as an architectural strategy. If you make the environment more worth living, then the biggest contribution to a more energy efficient environment is already done. Strategies of how to bring back plants into the city, how could people interact with nature, how could we use plants as filters of the air, but also as a starting point to create a new way of public was in the foreground.
The original idea was a retreat space in which you could have gone, work, and plug your devices into small power sockets and get energy from the plants that we were incorporated in the system.
We wanted to have a pavilion where some plants were involved into the system and people could have come to this place and have an interaction with the plants.
So we had to develop the structure in terms of which materials we had available and which machinery we have available at the university to develop the project. In terms of the skin, as we had a digital model, we tried to find out which ones are the materials we could use. So in terms of researching, we went outside of known architectural materials and go to other industries to find out what kind of a skin we can use. For example, this is a skin used to winterize boats when they're taken out of the water.
One of our main objectives was to emphasize the role of architects in development of active public spaces of the city. And we believe that working with professionals from different disciplines, professionals who are already active in the realm of public space in the city, such as activists, landscape architects, engineers, help us to somehow bridge the gap and shift from conventional architects' approach to public space into more sustainable and resilient way of thinking on public space.
What was challenging but actually also really interesting to have the opportunity to follow our agenda in applied research and art-based research. So to not only work behind closed doors, but really to confront the public and actually lay people, not artistic people and different kind of stakeholders into the development, but then especially for testing the prototypes in the public space.
iHerbLab is a research project that explores the idea of the architectural object. We put so much meaning into the objects that we create that in many ways they develop a metaphysical existence of their own.
We try to challenge the traditional means of representation. So using renders rather than plans and sections and exploring ideas of colour, form, materiality. Exploring these new ideas through renders and visualizations. We also explore through augmented reality.
We had our first solo exhibition at the Republic of Google. Architectural objects were exhibited digitally, in physical form and in augmented reality.
Through growth in that online platform, we actually were able to translate from a digital presence into the physical presence, which was this exhibition. In this way, we could have broader conversations. We could investigate more differences between theoretical concepts and also push ourselves to experiment and misuse new design tools that wouldn't really be appropriate in other applications.
Taking the architectural object that is currently abstracted and give it scale. Looking at how people inhabit it, how it touches a plane, how it touches the ground.
By provoking and raising again these ideas of architectural theory, we think that that can move architecture forward. I think for us, what's most important is that people are having these conversations again.
We're walking on the line between being utopian and realistic, and we really try to find middle ground in between these two extremes.
We get the chance here as instructors to work closely with the students.
Every semester we have a different topic, and this topic most of the time is related with the general phenomena.
We very much look into different professions, look for ideas and solutions, science, economy, even social agendas, always in combination with the ongoing architectural discussions.
To teach the students our experience, also to guide them through their projects, to emphasize them to work on their narratives. But usually we want them to develop their own language, so we never push them into certain design directions or thinking direction. We can only strengthen them in their opinions.
Like a geometric exploration or investigation that runs in parallel with research about the topic. We really focus on this kind of future scenarios.
Hani also emphasizes the student to invent something without being a science fiction author on projects, because they do really good research. I mean, they're really strong at that, the students here. It's about developing a tool that works, usually that works in the computer by scripting. At the end, it's always about a variety.
Strengthening your architectural craft, on the other hand, being really speculative and investigative.
And then you can really also have an architectural discussion. You don't have to prove a curve, or you don't have to prove the way you designed it, but you have to prove how it works together with the idea that you had at the beginning, because we take it serious.
Helping them to ask questions, not necessarily to give them answers, but just to kind of help them reflect on their own work. One of the main benefits is really how the students work in the studio space that is provided by them. Everyone gets their own table, and they go together in groups and really teach each other and get this really dynamic.
To approach the problems as an architect, to also think about the environment, also about the space, not only about technical solutions or world-saving solutions, but also about the qualities, the architectural qualities of a project. That's really important also.
It's really nice to see how they all come together from all different cultures and backgrounds and talk about architecture.